Hey everyone, welcome back to Dev Parkour. I'm Brian Parks, and in this video, we're going to show something that I've really been looking forward to for a long time. So, at the beginning of the week, or last week, I forget exactly when this video is going to come out, but not that long ago, I did a video where I ran a pen testing tool, specifically ZA proxy, the Z attack proxy, ZAP, the OWASP open source tool to do security scanning, pen testing. It goes by many different names, but I ran that against Glassminnow, which, if you haven't been following the channel, that's the PHP app that I've been building, or actually taking from kind of an old piece of code, dusting it off, taking it from legacy application to modern cloud native, secure, scalable application. And one of the important parts of that process is doing security scanning on it and doing pen testing on it. And I wanted to use a tool at the very least, but what I really wanted to do was compare the Z attack proxy, which was a tool that I'd never used, but it is free, it is open source, and let's be honest, it's the tool that I'm going to use into the future. But I wanted to compare that to another tool that I've actually used at a previous job. I actually had a couple previous jobs. So I used it 2 jobs ago from the consumer perspective. This tool generates reports, which we'll see in a minute. And I consumed a report that it had generated and used that to figure out what security vulnerabilities to fix in our application. I worked as part of a team with our security analysts and our engineering management to determine what we were going to do with the app so that it didn't come up on customer security scans, because that is a concern. Then at my last job, I actually used it to run a scan against our application. I was able to use this application, and it's a phenomenal application, but it also comes with a phenomenal price tag. I was able to get a free trial. It's a 30-day free trial. I think you can sign up for it as well. There's nothing stopping you from signing up for the 30-day free trial. But it is expensive, so be forewarned about that. The tool I'm talking about is HCL's AppScan tool. And actually, they do have a cloud version. I've not used the cloud version. That might actually be a little bit cheaper. I don't know. But we're going to show AppScan Standard, which is the desktop version. This is the tool that I've used in the past. I was really impressed with it when I used it from both angles. It started out as an IBM product, and actually the first time I used the report from it, it was still IBM branded. I think they've since, now it's an HCL product. However, it got to be an HCL product. Now it's an HCL product. But it is still the same tool. It is still just as powerful as it was before. And hopefully I'm not overhyping it too much, but let's get into it, and let's first see how to run a scan, basically the same scan that I ran against Glassminnow using ZAP, and then I'll do kind of a head-to-head comparison of what HCL AppScan does well and what Z attack proxy does well. So let me switch over to demo mode. And I apologize for the small text. If you want to watch this on a bigger monitor or a TV, please feel free. Hopefully this should come through to YouTube in 1080p, so you'll be able to see everything that's on my screen. I'll also zoom into some things. But to start with, you'll notice that I've already run a scan. I'm actually only about 60% of the way through. It's been running all day, and by all day I mean like a full 24 hours. It did cut out for a period of 4 hours. I guess it disconnected from the app for some reason or another. Maybe my computer went to sleep for too long. I noticed it and restarted it in the morning, but it has been going for I think 20 hours and 49 minutes or something like that. And it is still only 60% done. So I'm not sure why it's taking so long. I've run this on other apps and it's taken, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours, maybe 9 hours. I don't know, but not 24 hours. Maybe Glass Meadow is just really, really vulnerable and it is finding all kinds of vulnerabilities. So that'll be interesting to see. I do plan on running this all the way through because I want the results, but I might not necessarily share anything. There might not be anything necessarily new and different when it actually completes. So to start with, one thing that I want to point out is this configuration button here. Let me zoom in real quick. So up at the top, you have a few different options. Scan, pause, manual explore, configuration. We'll get to some of the other ones in a minute, but let's start with configuration. So in the configuration, these top two options are the ones that I really pay attention to, the ones that are important to me. URL and servers, that's basically where you configure the URL to visit the site that you're testing. You'll recognize this URL as the same URL that I ran ZAP against. Now, I did clear out the database and create a single user before running this scan, so it's exactly the same configuration as ZAP was running on. The only difference is that I think I'd created a couple events before I ran ZAP. I didn't create any events in the system, orders in the system before running this scan, but that doesn't really matter. Both scans end up creating hundreds, if not thousands, of orders. And then login management, which in AppScan is actually pretty cool. I recommend this recorded option, and then you can click this record button, and that actually pops up a browser to the URL you've defined over on this tab, and prompts you to log. Well, in my case, it prompts me to log in. It basically allows you to record the sequence of requests and inputs, so username and password or whatever, that you go through in order to actually authenticate with the application. Whereas in ZAP Attack Proxy, you had to manually put in the URL to use to log in and the username and password input fields. A little bit different. This seems to work really well. Thankfully, my app didn't have a super complicated authentication process, so it worked with ZAP Attack Proxy. I'd be curious to see if there are some areas where this automated recording and analysis aspect of HCL AppScan kind of breaks down. You might need to manually configure some things. If you've had an experience like that, go ahead and leave a comment down below. I'm kind of curious. But those are pretty much the two things that I configured in order to make this whole thing run. The only other thing that I did was I did click this Manual Explore button. And what Manual Explore does is it brings you to a little browser, and you can see up here it says recording. And basically you can click around. I forget exactly what I did. I think I logged in and then clicked around within the app to some of the top level sections of the site. Basically the same thing that I did with ZAP Attack Proxy, just to give the tool knowledge of more areas of the site than just what it would automatically discover by clicking the links itself. In my case, since that's basically all I was doing, I was just clicking the links in the top level navigation. Probably something that it could have found as well. But it's there if you need to use the built-in browser to help it discover other areas of the site that don't have direct links to it. Then all I did was I clicked this scan button, and I actually did continue full scan. That's it. Then I let it run. And you can tell it's already found a bunch of stuff. So reflected cross-site scripting, SQL injection, stored cross-site scripting, unencrypted login request. I think I mentioned in previous videos that I expected that the fact that I wasn't running this on SSL was going to show up on some of these scans. I don't believe it did on the ZA proxy scan, but obviously it has here, unencrypted login request. If we dive into that one, it'll probably say, hey, you're not running on HTTPS, you're only running on HTTP. Yeah, AppScan identified a password parameter that was not sent over SSL, right? So that's obviously in production, not something we would want to do. But for now, we can say, okay, these are false positives, right? This is a configuration issue, not a code issue. All right. So with that, that's basically how to set up HCL AppScan to run against a site and how to actually run it. Let's do a quick head-to-head comparison and see what it found. Right? So the one thing that was confusing to me with ZA proxy is this shows all the sites. Basically, this tab over here is the same as this section over here, showing the list of pages that it found and kind of the hierarchy of URLs within your site. But then the list of vulnerabilities in HCL AppScan, you have to choose this Issues tab over here, and it kind of shows up next to the site view. In ZAP Attack Proxy, it shows up in the bottom pane, and you actually have to click Alerts, which is a little bit different terminology than I was expecting. So let's see. Here we've got cross-site scripting, cross-site scripting, cross-site scripting. We've got persistent, which is just in the name for stored, and reflected. I think both of them use the same term there. I'm not going to get too hung up on the numbers because they might have different definitions of what a variant is. You can see over on the HCL side, it says 197 security issues and then 1,313 variants. Again, also the HCL scan hasn't finished, so the numbers might be different. These numbers might be low compared to what it'll ultimately come up with. So reflected cross-site scripting and stored cross-site scripting, both of those are on both sides. Unencrypted login request did not show up on the ZAP Attack Proxy side. SQL injection, I'm looking. I don't see it over here on the ZAP Attack Proxy side. And path traversal, I think I mentioned in the previous video that I thought this was actually a false positive, and it looks like it doesn't show up on the HCL side unless they call it something different. So that might be a little bit better. Application error disclosure, I'm sure that shows up over here. I know I've seen it on other scans. Looks like they're showing it as an informational one though, and not what is this? This is a medium risk. So interesting. I think you can actually change the severity of some of these issues that each tool finds as well. Buffer overflow. I'm curious to see if that was found over here. It might be called something different. I'm sure it detected it. But then I can see just kind of at a glance that there are some on each side that match up with some on the other side. Slightly different terminology in some places, but both of them find essentially the same thing. Yeah, so one thing I haven't shown yet, which I think is amazing, on the HCL AppScan side that I didn't really see on the Z-Attack proxy side is the reporting options. So on the Z-Attack proxy side, you just, yeah, I'm not going to be able to show that when I zoom in, but we just have options to generate an HTML report. And if you click that, all it does is ask you for where you want to save it. And we'll just say, what is this? Zap scan.html. That's it. Well, I guess it opens it up. But that's it. There's one report that you get to see. On the HCL AppScan side, you click this report tab, and you actually get a lot of different options. So by default, you basically get, that's not what I wanted to press. Here we go. You can pick and choose what you want to show on a report using the default template, or you can pick an industry standard template. So the OWASP top 10 might be cool. NIST, some other things, so on template here, you can, it basically shows how much data you want to show. So summary shows less, default is kind of a happy medium, detailed shows a lot. And then they have the developer version, which for a developer, you really want to see the details, which is important. So application data, application URL, script parameters, failed requests. There was nothing more frustrating to me than getting an AppScan report, either from this tool or from another tool. There are other tools out there that just said what kind of vulnerability existed and didn't show me how the tool had actually determined that the vulnerability existed, right? So for like a cross-site scripting vulnerability, I really wanted to see the URL that it went to, the parameter that it sent in, the value for that parameter that it sent in, and the response, and what in the response it saw that made it think that there was either a stored or reflected cross-site scripting vulnerability. Not that I don't believe that there is one. If it's coming up on an application security scan, I'm not going to argue that it may or may not exist. Clearly, the tool thinks it does, but seeing the information that got sent in and seeing the information that came back helped me narrow down what path through the code it might have taken in order to leverage that vulnerability, right? Because especially on a large form field, just getting the knowledge that there is a cross-site scripting vulnerability on that form, especially if you think you've already gone through and fixed a bunch of cross-site scripting vulnerabilities on that form, that doesn't really give you much to go on. But knowing that it's a particular field in a particular script that went through might help you find a shortcoming in your HTML sanitization routine or your field validation or something like that. But it helps you find a specific thing and helps pinpoint even what might be at issue in your code. So having that data, super important from the developer perspective. But if we go over to this regulatory compliance tab, there's one that I used. So I was working in DoD contracting. So the DISA application security and development STIG. This was the report that we used because that's kind of the standard report. They are looking for very specific things in very specific ways. And this tool, and this is probably why it's super expensive, because it has this entire list of regulatory compliance reports. It allows you to run the scan against your application and then get the exact thing that the regulatory agency or companies are looking for. So I found that to be awesome. But for my use, I'm probably just going to go with a default, nothing crazy, nothing specific like this. I'll either go with default or detailed report or developer and just save the standard report when it's all done. Just so I have everything there. And because I'm actually not sure, once the trial expires, I'm not sure if I'll be able to even open the scan that I've already run. So having that report will be key as it informs how I continue to develop Glass Minnow. So I think that's about it. So to answer the question that was posed by the video originally, is HCL AppScan better than ZA proxy? I think it's a resounding yes. Unfortunately, that is, well, not necessarily because of, but it comes with a much larger price tag. I don't even know what the price tag is that if I were to use HCL AppScan on Glass Minnow, on into the future, I don't know how much that would cost, but it definitely would cost me money, whereas Z-Attack Proxy is free. And Z-Attack Proxy, for a free open source tool, does a really good job. It finds a lot. But if I were going into the enterprise space, if I really wanted to do, Glass Minnow seriously, and people were paying me serious amounts of money to expect Glass Minnow to be secure, HCL AppScan or something like it. I just picked AppScan because it's something I've used in the past. Something like that would absolutely be worth the money. That said, some specific things that HCL AppScan has that Z-Attack Proxy does not are the reporting capability, that super easy authentication configuration. Actually, the entire configuration experience, I think, is a lot more straightforward. Both of them have a good, sophisticated manual explore capability. I don't think there's one or another that's necessarily better or worse. They just do things a little bit different way. So yeah, I think that's about it. With that, I will sign off. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button, and be sure to subscribe and click that notification bell so you'll get notified when I do more videos like this. This one was actually it's a special edition. It was on a special morning. Most of the time I do a code-oriented video on Monday, and then more general purpose videos throughout the week. This one is unique because I just got access to HCL AppScan, and I was so excited about having gotten access that I didn't want to wait any longer, since we're still talking about application security, and specifically dynamic application security testing. So with that, I will see you later. Be sure to subscribe, like the video, comment down below, ask questions. I'd love to hear from you, and I will see you in the next one.